Welcome back from that short break. And like I told you, when we come back, we'll be having a very interesting discussion with a guest we have in the studio. I'm talking about Paul Cast. I'm sure many of you know Paul Cast, the one who dared to finally pen something about men here in Nigeria. It's a pleasure having you in the studio, sir.
It's a privilege here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here.
Paul Cast is an author, and he wrote a book that is so interesting, a book that touches on a topic that many of us are going to love to hear about. And I'm talking about asking the question, putting in the details, talking about the essentials, how to be a man. The ladies will love this one podcast. First, let me ask, what prompted you to finally write something about men?
Well, first of all, I've been doing a lot of studying, and I came across a very interesting stat that talked about the amount of men that have experienced or are experiencing depressive cases. I'm also a psychologist by training, and so some of the incarceration cases, like men who have been in prisons and all of that, and the alarming rate of suicidal cases happening around men. And nobody was talking about these things. And I read so many materials about men, and most of them, interestingly, were written by women. About 95% of materials about men were written by women. And a lot of times, these were very, very objective ideas that they actually had, incredibly well-studied and well-rounded materials. But a lot of times, they often would respond to the question of what men were doing, but not why they were doing it or how they were getting it done. And so I felt the need for a man to step in and also have that conversation as well. So I wasn't seeing any material that was talking about some of the very intricate issues, and I felt the need to just really dig into them. And it was interesting to see, because I actually had no plans to write a book ever in my life. But I started a men's forum back in school many years ago. And I had about 400 young men turn up for that event. And it was amazing to see the kinds of questions that young men had, but never had the opportunity of responding to. So a lot of things that society was quiet about were like, men have it easy, men have it okay, but actually it's not so true. And, and some men appear very strong, but a lot of things are going on inside that nobody's talking about. And I felt the need to just, bring these things to the fore and get people to really be aware of what we are not really saying, that they actually need to be aware of, basically.
Yes, because fundamentally, if you look at it, once you attack the man, you say, oh, you're a man. Even from growing up, when you're growing up, a child growing up, oh, something happened, you're a man, man up. While the girl child is being pampered and treated with care and everything, once the same thing was applied to a male child, like, don't you know you're a man? So who told you men cry? Men don't cry. Man up, and all of those things build up somehow. Absolutely. And so, are these some of the things that your book is talking about?
Yes. I first of all begin the book by talking about some of the ideas that are misconstrued about men. Like you mentioned about men being expressive or crying and all of that. People are like, man up, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of men have a lot of issues. Like it's things we repress inside, we keep inside, and I've never had the chance of expressing, you bottle it in. And what women don't understand a lot of times is that men have experienced the exact same things that women do. But since we have no avenue of expressing them, nobody gets to hear them from us. And so that makes a lot of men to sink into incredible state of depression and anxiety. But we don't talk about these things at all, because you're a man, you're not expected to appear vulnerable or weak or all of that. And these are things that are not really appreciated in society. And I felt the need that to really get men to also get to understand that being expressive is okay. It's fine to, once in a while, cry about something that really gets you, unnerved. And that's why I felt the need to just really get a conversation going in that area.
Okay. You're a psychologist.
Yes.
You're coming from a background of experience that is speaking with people, helping them overcome some of their challenges. And of course, this experience has shaped how you approach this book. But let's look at, in your research, what are some of the common misconceptions that the women have about men? Because the debate is like it's never ending. Like sometimes what a woman is thinking, the man is wondering like, Hell, how did you even? That is not what the situation is. Why are you even going there? You understand? And it's like we are on two different lanes.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so many misconceptions, to be honest, that women have. I always say this to ladies when I get a chance to meet. Cause I have this forum where I actually meet ladies and just really talk, and they get to really ask very sincere questions. And one of the things I let them understand that a man is not a woman in trousers. We are completely two different beings. In other words, we communicate differently, we feel differently. Fundamentally we have the same needs, but we express them differently. Right, both men and women are both very emotional. If men are probably sometimes more emotional than women, but we are not emotionally expressive, and that's where the issue is. And most women are more expressive, and so they might think that because of that, men are not sensitive, men are not emotional, and so someone might even think, you know, men are not vulnerable. And I get to let them know that actually men really are. But we often do not have avenues that support that. And when people tell me, okay, why are men not expressive sometimes? I'm like, it's because some people cannot really handle expressive men, right? When you can handle an expressive man, you give him the reason to just, you know, handle and then mind his own business and just handle everything by himself, just be by himself and handle his own thing by himself. And so a lot of times he doesn't really have community around him. Even when men seem to have friends, we don't talk about real issues. We talk about surface issues like, you know, you want to compare, okay, I mean, how much money you have in your account, and then your cars, and the kind of house you live in, and those kind of peripheral ideas. Let's talk about sports, and that's okay, that's not bad. But we don't really dig into the very core issues that we should talk about. Then this is a very interesting analogy, some women have, is that men are intimidated by successful men, successful women. Right? And they're like, if a woman is successful, intimidates a man. That is not true at all. To be honest, usually most of us men don't like to feel unneeded, right?
I think that should be even the general thing. Nobody wants to feel unneeded.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to feel like they are not needed. Like, for instance, if you can meet all your needs, which you should, but I feel like if I'm also a part of your life, there should be something I should be able to meet. And then if you're all very independent on your own, you can do your thing by yourself, then you don't actually need me around. And so what am I doing there in the first place? And then you now feel like, and that now makes you feel like I'm intimidated by your success. That is not so true. I feel like and most ladies actually did not really get a chance to really hear a man talk, like really get to listen to a man really, really talk. And so they have ideas from other ladies or from issues that they've had in the past, let's say hurtful situation or traumatic whatever case that they probably have had, and they've not really heard a man really talk about men basically to that. So the idea they have about men is from what they have experienced from the past or what other ladies have told them about men, who actually have no idea who a man really is. So that's what actually fuels some of the misconceptions that they probably could have about men generally.
Now let's talk about the expressive nature of men. Why are men not expressive? Because if we're going to say, if we're treating this topic and we're looking at the fact that there are misconceptions and we can narrow it down to being that, is because we, the men, are not even doing enough of the talking.
Absolutely.
Now, why are we not?
That's so true. A lot of us men don't, we have a whole lot we want to say, but we just have not learned to articulate our thoughts, to really express exactly or put them into words. This is what I always say. Men don't talk like women. Women talk for the sake of bonding, creating relationships. A woman doesn't talk because she wants a solution to the issue. If she's telling you an issue, it's not because she wants you to solve it. And most men have that issue because when you tell a man your problem, in his mind he's thinking solutions. But that's not why. And sometimes if you do that to a woman, you just make her more upset because she's talking for the sake of wanting to express to you how she feels. It's not really about it. Sometimes she knows what she wants, what she needs to do. But it just needs that level of bonding, that, oh, sorry, I can imagine, that kind of thing. but for a man, it's different. When a man tells you something because he wants something to be done about it, right? So things we communicate, but we communicate differently. We have different avenues of communication as men. We don't necessarily use talk as the only tool of communication, you know. And sometimes some men are not expressive because they really don't trust the people that they want to be expressive to, right? Like in my book, I talk about what a man can do when a man is having a cave experience. Like that's when a man actually steps into his shell and he just wants to just be by himself and not talk about what is happening. Because when something happens to men, the first thing we want to do is think about what we can do about it. Like, you know, so he just wants to be on his own. And then you go like, talk about it, express, and then she feels like because you're not talking about it, that means she's not important in your life, right? Because for her, that is really how she gets to bond, by telling you an issue and then getting to really bond with her in that area. But when she asks a man, you know, tell me what's going on, and he's like, don't worry about it, she feels like he's not wanting to bond with her in that case. But that's not what happens. He's not talking because he wants to actually figure out an issue, to think about it. Yeah, so the thing is, a lot of men have not really did not grow up in environments that actually encourage communication around them. So they are used to just get it done by themselves, you know. So, but again, it's not really healthy for the relationship, because a lot of times the person you are with wants to be a part of your world, wants to really be a part of what is going on. That's how they get to see that they are also needed in your own world. But when you have to think about fixing by your own self, then that becomes an issue. So men literally have to learn how to communicate and really, really express how they feel. In that way, they get to be able to bond better with people that are involved with.
All right, we've been having the conversation with Paul Cast on his book, and in fact, our conversation has really been interesting. But we want to go on a short break. When we return, I'll be putting the question across the podcast. What are the effects of a man not being expressive, especially with some cases we have of people we call the violent men? That's what we'll be looking at when we come back from this short break. It's still Good Morning Abuja. Stay with us. Welcome back on the program, Good Morning Abuja. And if you've been following the conversation, trust me, it's been interesting. And if you're just joining us, well, you've missed, but there's still a lot to catch up on. And there's still more that we're going to explore, especially as it relates to men and how we can manage our emotions, and especially how we can express ourselves. Now, men hold up a lot of things. That general notion of you're a man up. Things happen and they just look at you like you're a man. It's like all your life you're being told to just put it in, suck it up. That is what men do. You don't cry, you don't say this, you don't express yourself. That's what women do. You are a man, be a man. And then sometimes the men break.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, when a man breaks down, we know the effect. It's usually, especially if he's the violent type, it gets to be expressed in violence. It affects the wife, the family, the children, affects the society. Let's x-ray this. Why?
Absolutely. My friend calls depression, he calls it a repressed anger, as anger turned inwards, right? When someone seems to bottle something over a long period of time, it just gets to the point where it just, you know, it's over the neck, and they get to express them, because they really can't express them in words. They express them with their hands and with all kinds of, you know, unacceptable behaviors, and that's simply as a result of insecurity or a reaction to unaffirmed emotions. Like when a young boy when he's a child, a boy, and then he gets to express it in a certain way, and then that is not affirmed, it's not seen. He learns to just bottle it in, because after all, by expressing myself, I usually either I'm told that I'm not man enough or whatever. So he learns just by living to just repress certain things inside, and then it makes him, you know, it can cause a lot of damage. A lot of, not that it's in all the cases, but a lot of people that are very quiet all the time, like extremely very quiet, a lot of times that's just a defense mechanism, because they often are not sure if their expressive nature will make them to be treated in an acceptable way. So it's a dangerous thing when a man is not able to express himself, because it could make him express in other ways. That's why it's important for me. I always encourage men to have a community. As a man, have a circle, have friends. Don't be by yourself. Don't be lonely by yourself. Only you, just yourself, you and myself and I. Because when you do that, you have nothing to fill you up, and sometimes you are giving so much to your family or to your colleagues or whatever, and there's no place supplying you anything, like a tank, for instance, a tank that keeps filling the whole house with water but has no avenue of supplying itself. It gets dry. That's what happens to a lot of men. They have no avenue that supplies or fits them back, so they just keep on giving and giving. So one time it becomes so dry, and in so doing, they begin to become cranky. They begin to have I call it ghosted personality. They lose a sense of who they are in a bid to kind of like become what they are not, because they have no avenue that's actually feeding into that. So it's a terrible thing actually when a man does not have any avenue of expressing himself, and that's why it's important for men to learn to do that. Build a community around yourself. Have friends, maybe 2 or 3 guys that you can chill with, talk to, and then maybe just have an avenue where you can actually air out what's going on in your mind. That will keep you in a balanced state to be able to actually process these things better, and as such be able to handle it better, going forward as a man.
Okay. Right. Before we go, I have one last question.
Okay.
And there's this circle that, whether we like to admit it or not, is there. There's this circle. You even hear some parents say, "I wasn't raised this way, so I'm not gonna sit down and watch you become a woman," like a father to a son, and then that son grows up and he too wants to continue that circle. And sometimes the concept here is raising a man who is not expressive, who does not have a support system, who does not have anyone to share with.
Yeah.
And then things are heavy on him. He feels like he's not part of the system, and he revolts against the system. How do we break the cycle?
Yeah,
how do we get the parents of nowadays to begin to understand that there is a need for an educational reorientation for especially the male child?
Absolutely, that's just the word, the educational reorientation, because it's a mindset. It's a rigmarole of continuing a certain mindset that had gone from previous generation. We actually didn't really see our fathers sit down to talk with their sons. They talk about maybe just regular things, daily things, but not really about what it means to be a man. So I feel like it's important for parents now to be intentional, right? Yes, they may not have seen that happen in their own time, seen that happening, and they saw the effect of that in their own lives, to be honest, right? If they can remember back to when they were children or teenagers or just young adults, they probably could remember when they felt isolated, they felt like their parents were not part of their lives, and they had to figure it out. And figuring it out is tough.
Yes.
Because you have to just keep on experimenting here and there. So I feel like the first thing for them to realize that, number one, is important that we have that conversation, right? You as a father, your son is looking up to you because you are the first pointer to what a man is supposed to be.
To him,
right? So you are the first thing he looks up. He looks up to you in so many ways. So, but there are some things you can model and some things you have to educate them on and to really talk to them about. Like my dad, I had to be very intentional, right, to tell him, because he didn't have time. Normal African dad, yeah. It's about work. I was like, "Sir, sit down, let's talk, sir. I have this issue, that can we talk about?" And he'd be like, "It's busy." And I'm like, no, let's talk. And then it amazed me how much wisdom came out of his mouth when we got talking. And then something he said to me then is still in my mind till now, right? So parents should actually be intentional about having that sit out with their sons to really get to talk to them about some of these issues. And in so doing, I'm sure we're going to have a better society going forward, basically.
Wow. Well, I'm sure you've been following up on this conversation, and it has been interesting for you as it has been for me, because this is something that we can't exhaust it all.
Absolutely.
We can't exhaust it all, but you could you can up this conversation. You can follow up on it. You could do better by even grabbing a copy of podcast book, How to Be a Man. Whether you're a man or woman, you need that book in your library. Something you need to read not once, not twice, but read constantly, because there's a lot of wisdom packed in that book, and that book is going to make us understand better the dynamics of how we men think. Podcast, it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. How to be a man. I'm speechless, because there's so much in that book that has opened my eyes. But we go on a short break. When we return, Good Morning Abuja, the program continues. Please stay with us.